Right now, President Trump is speaking with governors from across the country at the White House. Remarks are pretty hot. He said it's a nice, friendly group. There are a few Democrats there. He also said that he has the highest poll numbers he has ever had, which is absolutely the case. And he began by talking about Ukraine. We will bring you all of that as it comes. Well, hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered on this Friday. I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Here's my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Dr. Nicole Saphier, Fox News contributor and board-certified physician, Kayleigh McGee-White, independent women features editor-in-chief and journalism fellow for the Steamboat Institute, and Griff Jenkins, Fox News national correspondent. Well, Elon Musk made a hot and surprise appearance at CPAC and was given a pretty epic gift from Argentina's president, Javier Milei.
Javier Milei from Argentina, you guys know who that is, right?
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Oh, well, if you couldn't have predicted it, someone went nuts. They're called the left. And Musk's chainsaw for bureaucracy will have plenty to cut through after DOGE scored some major legal victories this week. Take a look at these. Federal judges denied an attempt to block DOGE access to 7 agencies' data, their ability to shrink the federal workforce, their access to student borrowing debt, and access to Labor Department statistics. Emily, this is a whole lot of legal wins. And, as we're talking, I just want to pull up Javier Milei because I think it's important our viewers know the context. He went viral because he tore off the wall the names of ministries he wanted to cut in Argentina. He had this viral chainsaw moment. You see him there. He's just peeling the names of ministries off. And then he hands the chainsaw over to Elon Musk.
I mean, it's hilarious. It's also very meme-worthy. It's like total Leatherface. I loved everything about this, but I think that the comedic tone is awesome, but it's a thin veneer over the absolute vital service that this is providing, the crucial dismantling of what has been a very corrupt and toxic system that we've had for quite some time. I had the honor of having Administrator Lee Zeldin on radio yesterday on Fox Across America and for Jimmy Fallon, and he talked to me about the $22 billion that he's yet discovered that is essentially improper and also hidden. And 2 things. He said, number 1, it's going to get worse. They're going to uncover more. And number 2, what disturbed me the most was the lengths that has been baked into the system to hide any transparency, to hide any effort or option for tracing. So what it means is that as we attempt to claw back things, as we attempt to identify the malignant tumors that have sort of infected everywhere, it's going to be really hard, in plain speak. And I think what's important, my point is that we need to have some time moving forward to ensure that as we first identify and then dismantle, we need to sort of restructure a little bit, right? And that takes time. So the message needs to continue successfully. Clearly, Argentina got the memo that this is really vital and healthy for the country because we need to succeed in the midterms and we need to have returns, those deliverables on the investment so that the American people see how important this is and how a way to create it so that Dems cannot simply revive the toxicity that we were used to before.
Dr. Saphier, I decided to have some Friday fun and dig through the crosstabs of a CNN poll, and I found some interesting things. So you remember the threat to democracy rhetoric. Of course. So they're still using it. They're saying Elon Musk, he's a special government employee, he's a threat to democracy, taking him to the courts. Well, the American people aren't buying it. This. Look closely. Okay, so at the bottom, you see 2021. 56% of Americans believe democracy is under attack. Who was president then? Joe Biden. Doesn't get much better the next year. 52% believe this. 2023, 54%. Majority of Americans say democracy is under attack with Biden. Oh, wait, but this morning I find that number has fallen 11%. to 45%. So keep making the argument about DOGE, but the American people don't seem to be buying it.
Well, they don't. And, you know, it is rather funny when the biggest argument against Elon Musk is people saying that he wasn't elected. And if that's their strongest argument against him, they're already losing that argument. The reality is Elon Musk was on the stage with then candidate Donald Trump, and that is when he still won the election. They knew Elon Musk was going to be a part of it. They had talked about DOGE. You know, I've been calling DOGE the wrecking ball. I did appreciate that it was not a wrecking ball, but a chainsaw. But here's the issue. Just to Emily's point, she's saying it's going to take some time. Yes, right now we're seeing this wrecking ball. We're seeing, you know, we're bringing to light all of the fraud, the misuse, the abuse, and other things, the wasteful spending. But it is going to take Congress to bring back some of that funding through appropriations. And so unless Congress gets on board, a lot of what DOGE is doing is just bringing to light some of our wasteful spending. It is going to take an all-hands-on-deck effort to really make sure that this has long-term gain for the American people.
Yeah.
No, without a doubt. And, you know, the American people don't need a civics lesson. We just saw that in the poll. But Stephen Miller thought that the White House press corps did. He gave them a civics lesson yesterday. It was pretty fun. Watch.
It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government.
Griff, did he speak slow enough for CNN to understand?
Well, look, Stephen Miller, clearly if the White House politics gig doesn't work out, professor of civics is going to be a shoo-in at any university in the country. We need to bring civics back. But you know what the American people need? Is more chainsaw. You know, Kaylee, you can appreciate this. What's so significant about that moment is CPAC is the largest gathering of conservatives in the country. It always has been. I've covered it since the 90s for 30 years. It's where all of the conservative minds come together and talk about things. In the 90s, when I covered it, Rush Limbaugh was on the radio. Newt Gingrich was the speaker. And you know what they talked about? Fiscal responsibility, getting rid of waste, abuse, and fraud. And you know what happened? Nothing. But then here is Elon Musk, a private citizen, comes in with President Trump's mandate in less than 30 days, cuts $55 billion, starts showing us what government's going to look like, a smaller, shrinked government. And it's remarkable that he actually was able to get it done.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly right. And I love that you bring back the great days of Rush Limbaugh. Those were wonderful days and a good reminder. I don't think it's possible to overplay Stephen Miller, so I asked our team to pull another soundbite of him taking a host to task on the issue of DOGE.
I understand that even a temporary interruption in federal employment is a great crisis and catastrophe for you and for CNN. What the American people see is a government that is finally delivering a promise of accountability under President Trump. You want to have a conversation about transparency. Let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea where the $22 billion that the Department of Health and Human Services provided to illegal aliens under Joe Biden is right now? $22 billion with a B.
I mean, those are fair points, Kaylee.
He's exactly right. And this is why I love the chainsaw image, because it is a perfect representation of what Musk and Trump see DOGE as being and its role in the federal government. They are disruptors. They are here to dismantle the status quo from top to bottom. And, you know, when we talk about DOGE, you realize that most people in the country fall into one of two camps. Either you agree with Trump and Musk that our government has been totally unresponsive, is deeply broken, and is simply not working anymore for the average American, or you tend to be someone who prefers the status quo. You're deeply invested in the way that the system is currently run, even if you recognize that there may be some problems with it. And, you know, everyone in Washington, especially, who's criticizing Musk probably falls in that status quo camp. And they say things how they just want Trump and Musk to be a bit more surgical, a bit more careful with the cuts that they're using, that they would rather Elon Musk use a scalpel instead of a chainsaw. Well, there are two big issues with that. Number one, you wouldn't let us use a scalpel either. You certainly haven't in the past. And number two, the vast majority of Americans simply disagree with you. They voted for the chainsaw. And I think of many of my friends and family back in the Midwest and how they saw the 2024 election as really the last and possibly best off-ramp from what was becoming an authoritarian regime under the left. They did not think that it would be leisurely or comfortable to get off of that path. They knew it was going to be disruptive. They knew it was going to be uncomfortable, and that is what they voted for.
Without a doubt. Well, we are still monitoring President Trump's remarks. We will play those back for you. Apparently, he just said his favorite word is tariffs. That word does seem to get leaders moving. It certainly did with Canada and Mexico. As soon as we get those remarks on playback, we will play them for you.